Well, hey, everybody. This episode of the Merchant Sales Podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, NMI.com. If you want to learn more about them and their fantastic gateway and omni-channel solutions, head over to ccsalespro.com/NMI. Patti, I love the episode today. A little more of a complicated topic than we normally try to tackle, but it was really good.
Yeah, it was, but it was highly informative. I mean, I came away understanding a lot better about SIC codes and how interchange applies.
Yeah, for those of you who are listening that if you don't know how the business type impacts the interchange, definitely this is the one for you. For those of you that do understand that, maybe you have a processing company and you're not aware that the changes Visa made recently will impact the underlying cost structure, the effective rate of interchange because of the SIC code, you need to listen in as well. So that was a good one. And then tell us about the Insiders Report today, Patti.
You know, I bring up gift cards, and I know that that's a tough sell with our audience. For some reason, you know, people don't want to, aren't interested in going out there and selling gift cards. I present some data points that, really drive home the importance of them for ISOs, agents, consumers, merchants, the whole value chain. And then you had an excellent, your questions from the field I found very helpful today. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So it just so happens, and usually when I do these, they come from my consulting calls and stuff. And I've just lately been talking to a lot of call centers and companies that are really trying to just get past the gatekeeper. Even individual agents throughout face-to-face. So I just give some tips on how to get past the gatekeeper over the phone or in person that I really think if you can implement them, you'll see a big uptick in your contact rate.
Great. So let's go, James.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the Merchant Sales Podcast.
Hey, everybody. So Patti and I are here today with Kyle Morgan. He is the CEO and head of product at MPI. How are you doing today, Kyle?
Doing great.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. We're really excited about the conversation today because, there was this news came out. Oh, Visa and MasterCard are delaying their interchange increases. Yeah. And yet we are seeing some interchange increases just in the change in categorization and all that. So we're going to dive into that today and talk about some of the changes that Visa made to recategorize things, specifically for restaurants. Before we dive into all that today, though, Kyle, give us a little bit of background on your story. I know you've been on before, but tell us a little bit about MPI and kind of how you got into this.
Sure. So background behind me is, I started this company 15 years ago. I was a sophomore in college, was kind of going to be a teacher, but didn't really like that career path. Found the space, started learning, started selling, got hooked on residual income. By the time I was going to be a senior, we picked up our first bank partner. So we had a local bank here. They've been a partner of ours for 13 years. Started adding a bank or so every 2 years. We're now at 16 employees, adding 2 more actually in 2 weeks. So
awesome.
We've grown the ISO to be national and even international in some situations. And that's kind of our nutshell. Our bread and butter is local banks, small banks, stuff like that.
Sure.
But we also do integrations and other things like that as well.
Okay. So just as an aside, so you started as a sophomore in college. You look pretty young, but how many years are we talking about?
That was 15 years ago. So,
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's
You got in when it got really competitive, when it was really.
It was
right?
Oh yeah, I was replacing some of the old boxes, the old Trans 330s is what I was getting out there with, and
right.
It was definitely the beginning of that, but it was during the recession, so we got to sell savings, and that was still a big thing back then. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so let's dive into this topic today. So Kyle, maybe you could start us off and just kind of explain to our audience, how did you or the restaurants start to notice this issue, and then maybe even put a number on it for our audience of how many basis points of increase in cost are we talking about as a result of these changes to the interchange categorization?
Yeah, so it's been an interesting kind of to look at. So the reason that we noticed it pretty heavily is, so as a company, we do a lot of flat rates. So for us, interchange makes a big difference in our margins. Mm-hmm. So when we start to see our margins shrink, we start going, what's happening? And we can usually blame interchange or something on those lines. Yeah, sure. So that's why we first saw the change. We're saying, okay, this restaurant we're making 10 basis points less on. This restaurant making 15 basis points less on, So first we go, okay, is our processor doing something funny, or is something weird happening? So we started to dive in closer. And so what happened around March is the biggest change in that space was that the restaurants are seeing a shift from a bunch of rewards cards and base level cards to what they call now Restaurant 2. Now, restaurant two, the more I researched it, the more I realized, okay, it was not a malicious thing on Visa's side. They thought they were doing some restaurants a favor. They got rid of the 10 cents, but then they raised the base rate to 2.6. So what ended up happening is your small ticket restaurants now saw a benefit of 2.6 out of 10 cents. Great. My average ticket's $7. I'm saving some money.
Right.
Your bigger restaurants that would have $100 average ticket now saw a 40 basis point swing the other direction. They didn't care about the 10 cents.
Right.
They cared about the percentages. So what we had to start doing was really looking at our portfolio and going, okay, are the restaurants that are quick service, are they on the right SIC code on a restaurant SIC code? And the restaurants that are, not, would they be better off on a retail SIC code, or changing the way they're doing tipping so we can move them off that restaurant, so stop seeing a restaurant too with interchange. If that all makes sense.
Yeah. So what exactly is sort of happening at the restaurants? In terms of their cost structure.
Yeah, so for the restaurants, they're just basically, we're starting with the phone calls now. So we'll get away from our flat rate merchants. We'll go to the ones that are on Interchange Plus. We're getting the phone calls going, hey, my effective rate's up 0.1, 0.2%. That's about what we're seeing. So they're going, you raised my rates. You know what I mean?
Right. You raised
and most
my
of these
rates.
guys don't actually know how to read a statement. They just know how to aggregate fees.
Right.
So they get in front of their accountant around October because they're doing their taxes. Their accountant's saying, hey, last year you paid 2.2 and now you're paying 2.4. You need to go yell at your credit card processor. And so we're getting those phone calls going, nope, I have them on Interchange in 20. Their rates haven't gone up, but their effective rate has.
Right.
And so that's what we're seeing. We're seeing inbound large ticket restaurants. When I say large, I'm over $75 average ticket, fine dining, seafood, those kinds of places.
Sure.
They're calling and going, hey, you raised our rates. It's like, no, it's just interchange has gone up for specifically you.
Yeah. So, Kyle, I think at this point, one of the things we should probably do here is zoom out a little bit and talk about SIC code classification.
Yeah.
Sure.
Our audience may not even be aware of how this impacts interchange costs, kind of in general. So can you talk a little bit about how this works? What role does the SIC code play in terms of how we're classifying that merchant when we're submitting interchange? And maybe you even have a couple of other examples of unique SIC code classifications that have a big impact on interchange cost.
Yeah. So SIC code, I'm sure every agent's always, had that, submit the application and gone, do I have the right SIC code on here? You know what I mean? And most time it's just one of those things where they're just like, God, I just Googled what this business was and I put a number down and my processor says, nope, that's not valid, or that's not one that we use, or whatever else. So for most agents, that's the brunt of what they know about SIC codes. Am I putting a number on there that the processor is going to approve?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's the base knowledge of most of our agents in general. But what a lot of them don't understand is that, you look at interchange, you're going to see the most common ones you're going to see are supermarket, retail, restaurant, utility, gas station. Those are the most common SICs that you're going to see. And if you don't put the person on the right SIC code, they're not going to get the rates associated with those specific situations.
Right.
Supermarket's a great one. You know what I mean? That's one of the more common ones. You have to meet a couple criterias, like you have to have a frozen section, you have to have a meat section, you have to have all these things that are requirements to make the supermarket work.
Right.
But what we have found, even during COVID specifically, we've had a couple produce stands that now qualify for supermarket, for example. So now they went from retail rates to supermarket rates because they've added frozen, deli, meat. You know what I mean? They became the local grocery store again because people were afraid to go to Walmart or go to the big places. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we've even found situations like that where if you move their SIC code, you're able to save them 40, 50 basis points without even lowering their rates or even raise their rates, and you're still going to show an effective savings. Or cash discounting or flat rates, you put them on cash discount, now you've increased your margins as well.
Right. Let me, if I could just interject real quick. I was wondering, Kyle, this seems to be something that the change that Visa did reflects on restaurants. Have there been similar changes in other SIC codes? Not
that I've seen. Again, I think this change wasn't malicious. I think this change was in effect to appease the fast food business.
Right.
And they really haven't they didn't really think about both sides of the coin.
Yeah. I was just thinking big supermarkets versus little supermarkets, for example.
Yeah, no, we haven't really seen much on the other stuff. They did consolidate some of the rewards cards, but again, they didn't raise retail rates. They didn't raise supermarket rates. They didn't raise, realistically, they didn't raise
anything, right?
Anything. They actually got rid of a per item on restaurant. It just again, it's somebody who's seeing a global view at Visa.
Right.
And when it comes down to real small business merchants, it doesn't necessarily work.
Sure.
Right.
So I want to do one more kind of zoom out thing here, and then let's talk about restaurants specifically in this SIC code situation. But so let me restate what I think you just said to, as far as the SIC codes for our audience's benefit. So the idea here is I go to a food stand, let's say, 1 week, and I process my card payment, and the rate is a certain amount. Let's say it's 2%, and that's the interchange rate. And that interchange rate is because of the type of card that I used, but it's also because of the SIC code of that business. And then during that week, they reach out to you and they realize, wait a minute, I could be classified as a supermarket. So you classify them as a supermarket. Now the next week I come back, use the same card, spend the same amount of money, and yet instead of it being 2%, my interchange is now maybe 1.5 or 1.6% effective rate, because now when that transaction is submitted, it's saying this is a transaction that was submitted not at a retail store, but at a supermarket. And so the interchange on that card is going to vary based on the SIC code. Is that basically what you're saying?
Correct. Yeah.
So, okay. So what you're saying is it's like if James has a reward card and then I'm behind him with just a vanilla card, right? It's going to be a different interchange, but not because of the SIC code, but because of the card.
Well, reverse that. So it's actually because of the SIC code. So supermarket's an easy example. What they've done is the rates are very similar to retail, but they put a cap on the transaction. I think it's 55 cents for credit and 35 cents for debit, because they want these supermarkets, and there's been lawsuits in that space.
Sure.
I mean, it's not one that we go after a lot, but their associations are really strong. So they've kind of beat up Visa enough to say, if I have a supermarket, I get caps on my interchange fees.
Okay.
And so because of that, if you put that SIC code in there, now you're a supermarket, you're getting the same rates as your local grocery store or everything else like that. But Visa does still say you have to have certain thresholds, otherwise it's fraud. You can't just go on every retailer. I'm writing supermarket all day long. You have to meet the criteria.
Right.
But yeah, so that's that situation. Same thing. Another good example is charities.
Okay.
You put a charity SIC code in, all the rewards cards still hit, all the business cards still hit at regular interchange, but debit and regular credit cards are at 0.8%. So you basically have created and what Visa's trying to do is incentivize charities to take credit cards.
Sure.
So they're giving a better interchange for that specific SIC code.
Yeah.
And that's an easy one for agents to do. And this is a common mistake for them. Some of them will put a nonprofit through as an association or a business association like a chamber of commerce. If you put them through as a charity SIC code, now you get the
lower
special rate on those credit cards.
Right. So this is really good. I think again, for our audience, just to understand, it's like when we talk about interchange, which is a very complicated topic, and it really is like a grid where when you kind of feed a transaction into this grid, they're looking at a lot of different data points to say, the idea, the way I explain to people is almost like a cascading effect, where it's like, we're going to try to qualify this for the best possible rate. Well, let's see. Is it this? Is it this? No, it's not. Okay. What's the next best rate? And so on down the list it goes, all the way to a downgrade, which basically means it didn't qualify for any of these things. And so it's downgraded. But yeah, again, to summarize it is, for business types, the same card used at a retail store versus a supermarket is going to have a different interchange rate, even though it's the exact same card with the exact same transaction amount, because it's a different business type. So now that we have that piece of it, Kyle, let's zoom back into restaurants. So give us that information again a little bit. You touched on it a minute ago, but what is this SIC code classification that restaurants are on now that is kind of hurting them or helping them depending on their average ticket size? So maybe you can kind of now zoom in and explain that a bit more.
Sure. So the biggest thing about a restaurant SIC, so restaurant and bar, very similar, they're only off by a digit on an SIC code. The main reason you have to put certain restaurants or certain businesses on that SIC code is because you have tip adjust. Yes. And so if you're using tip adjust, they have to be a restaurant SIC. Otherwise, you're going to have downgrades. Okay. So if you're starting with a $100 transaction and you're closing at 120, that's a tip adjust. So if you're in a retail space and you're doing that and you put a tip line on a retailer, they're actually seeing downgrades and interchanges going up. Okay. So let's start first at, like, before we dive into like how to save restaurants money,
Yes.
You've got to realize that, like, it can't be an adjusted tip. You have to have a restaurant SIC code. So stepping back, one of our customers was a seafood place and they had a tip line and they were selling seafood out of their, they weren't really a restaurant. They were just
selling out of a truck.
Yeah. Bushel of crabs or,
right.
A thing of clams or whatever. But they were giving tips to their employees. So they wanted the line there, and they, 1 out of 10 transactions would have the tip on there. So what we were able to do to them is move them back to a retail SIC code. So that saved them 40 basis points. And we put a tip prompt on the terminal now. So now pre-authorization, they're asking, okay, do you want to add a tip? Yes or no? Yes.
Okay.
$2. Boom. So now that $120 transaction is going out at $120, authorizing, batching, settling for the same amount. So now we qualify for retail. So that wouldn't necessarily work in fine dining, but in this situation for a seafood place with a real, I don't know if anybody, you guys are all Maryland, Pennsylvania, bushels of crabs.
Oh yeah.
Right now, like $300 nowadays.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's insane. So this guy, for him to save 40 basis points on a bushel of crabs is a big difference. You know what I mean? So we went back and fixed that situation.
Right. So, and again, it's like I keep wanting to zoom out on this. So just because this topic today is so complicated for our audience, I think a lot of it is things they don't understand. So let me restate that a second and tell me if I missed anything. But the idea here is one of those qualifications to qualify for a certain interchange is that the authorization amount matches the settled amount. Mm-hmm. So when I go to run my card for, $100, I'm sitting down at a restaurant, they take my card, they go to the back, they run it for $100, they bring me the receipt. That's an authorization. So they went ahead and authorized $100 and they got that authorization code. Well, at the end of the day, they're going to settle the transaction and they're going to use that authorization code to say, hey, we already authorized this transaction. Now we're going to settle it. If the settlement amount is different than the authorization amount, that's an important data point. And what I think you're saying here is if you're a restaurant, that's okay. If you're classified as a restaurant, that's okay because that's a tip adjust. If you're classified as a retail and you're trying to get retail interchange rates and you do that, that's going to become a downgrade because one of the qualifications to be considered retail is that your authorization and settlement amounts are going to match. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. I got it. Okay. So one last topic about this that I kind of want to touch on, and that is pay at the table.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Right. So let's say we have a fine dining restaurant and they're experiencing this problem, which as I understand it is that now a lot of these transactions that were going at this base rate of interchange, now they're at restaurant 2. So their percentage went up, their per item went down, but that's a net negative for them. That hurt them. Their cost went up. So they're like, hey, that'd be great. I would love to be classified as retail. Is it possible to do that with pay at the table so that the authorization and settlement amount are the same? Or have you seen that at all?
It's funny. This is, way back before the days of Toast, we actually played with this a little bit, debit at the table, pay at the table.
Yes.
And Genico had come out with one. They're actually putting them in all the Red Lobsters. So
yes.
Ironically, we actually bought 100 of the Red Lobster devices because Red Lobster got rid of it because people were having trouble with it. So, so the answer is yes. In theory, it will work. It does work. You have to always have tip prompting. It has to be on the device. It has to be pre-authorization.
Right.
In reality, I would say, if Red Lobster couldn't get it to work, 7 or 8 years ago, I'm not sure how many people are going to get it to work now, but I am seeing it more commonly. You are seeing it a little bit with, Toast merchants, some of those other systems that are out there that are prompting for it. But it comes down to kind of what you've always talked about the cash discounting side. You have to train your staff how to have that conversation and not feel awkward going, please tip me, do you want to, and do people have a weird experience? There are some restaurant people who are like, that's trashy. I don't want to do it. You know what I mean? Like, I want to have a tip line because people want to write that, big flashy tip on there. They don't want to do, So again, yes, the answer is yes, but can you go into a merchant and convince them to change the way they operate tipping to save them the 40 basis points? That's the sales rep.
Well, and I think one of the other interesting things here is, unlike, I've been having more conversations about this with cash discounting because same problem basically, and different issue, but kind of the same underlying problem, which is when you're doing a cash discount or even a surcharge for that matter, you have to show the consumer what they're going to pay. And so you have to calculate it in real time. And so if you want to add the non-cash adjustment or the surcharge to the tip revenue, well, it has to be paid at the table because otherwise you can't do that. You have to be able to calculate it in real time.
Right.
And what's interesting though, is in that situation, it's not the end of the world. If somebody is like, I don't want to do that, bring me a receipt, that's fine. And now the merchant is just eating the non-cash adjustment on the tip revenue. But with this situation, that would be a problem because then that would be a downgrade. Yeah. So now they would pay a lot more because they, literally are, if they're trying to do pay at the table 90% of the time, the other 10% of those transactions are going to be downgraded if they're listed as retail, right?
Yeah, and you have that option. I mean, and the other workaround for that restaurant situation is, some of the softwares have tip out functionality. I know Micros has it. The one that James, you and I have been working on actually has a tip out functionality. You can take the 3% out of the tipped claimed amount and still net it out. Now, again, depending on what state you're in, is that legal or not to take that from the server?
Right.
That's still another issue.
Yeah.
So,
right. Kyle, it seems to me that you've had a lot of success in the industry. The kind of success that other ISOs and agents are looking for. I'm wondering if you have some advice that you could give those in our industry that maybe have, just a single person ISO or a very small team, that are looking, that are trying to go to the next level.
Yeah.
And it seems to me, you've accomplished that, as we said, in your last 15 years. What kind of advice would you offer?
Yeah, so based on today's topic, I would say a niche is always great. So you find an SIC code that you learn really well, really well, how to do, and you go after it because, more commonly, some of these guys aren't set up correctly. Go after government. If you're going after towns and cities and software,
right?
Especially with that, government are often set up as regular Moto or regular, Joe Schmo retail. Government.
And it's government, sure.
Yeah, exactly. Lodging.
Save them a lot of money that way.
Yep. Utility companies, charities. Charities are great ones to go after because a lot of them aren't set up correctly. So, our most successful agents are, I call them our 6-figure agents. They've built up enough revenue. They're making over 6 figures on a regular basis. They've picked 1 or 2 niches. They've gotten involved and done integrations with software. We've helped them do that. They've gone after the special interchange where, we for another example would be, lodging is another SIC code.
Sure.
If you don't pass lodging data, very similar to like if you don't pass, the whole authorization we're talking about, you don't qualify for that. That's another 60 basis points. So we had somebody go in who the software was using authorized.net, which isn't lodging certified. We moved them to our gateway, which is lodging certified. And now we've saved every merchant on that portfolio 40 basis points just by converting that over. So anything you can do to come in and show both your expertise in the space, so SIC code, for example, or integrations or whatever, and then scale that out. You know what I mean? So once you've done that, now you're the lodging expert or the government expert or whatever. And so now the deals start to come to you more organically and a little less, let me go knock on 100 doors today.
Right.
And that's what you want to do. I mean, the first 2 years in this industry are always feet on the street, learn the space, make the mistakes, get out there and do it.
Right.
But if you want to be in that upper 6 figures, upper 100s, you got to find a niche and you gotta build your inbound flow. And so you don't have to spend all your time knocking on doors.
Oh yeah. Fantastic advice. Fantastic advice. So Kyle, I know you guys are always looking for new partners. As you mentioned earlier, you guys have gone nationwide. Tell our audience a little bit about MPI, maybe what you're looking for in partners today, and then also give us some contact information of where our audience should go if they want to learn more about you or about MPI.
Sure. So yes, we have on our side our agents. Most of our agents are industry experts. They've been in the space for a while, so we don't have a big training program for new agents. But they've been in the industry a while, but maybe they want to help with a lot of integration work. That's been kind of our big thing. We've been doing about 1 or 2 software integrations a month right now. So if there's anybody who's an agent out there who's just like, I can do merchant, but I really need help with like putting my stuff in software or talking software, those are the agents we're looking for right now. So our contact for us, sales@mpiprocessing.com. It's Mercantile Processing Inc. So MPI processing, or just go to mpiprocessing.com, fill out a contact form. Our director of sales, Katie, she's really good. She came from integrated play, so those are the agents we're looking for, the partners we're looking for. So anybody in that software space that just needs to make the payments experience better, that's what we're looking for.
Great.
Awesome. Kyle, thank you so much for taking the time today to talk about this rather complicated subject. I think a lot of the larger companies are thanking you already. The smaller ones are like, hey, this is the kind of person I need to be talking with more often. So I appreciate you taking the time. So Patti, of course, our official sponsor, NMI. You can head over to ccsalespro.com/NMI to learn more. But I thought after our interview with MPI and talking to Kyle, such a great time to talk about this concept that NMI has coined the next gen ISO.
Yes.
We even created a merchant sales insight around that topic. But, kind of the concept here is, if you want to become an ISO that's going to get to the next level, the next generation type of ISO that's not going to become out of date, well, technology is going to have to play a role in what you're doing.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that you have to have an army of developers. I mean, that doesn't hurt. But if you don't have your own army of developers, or if you do, it's a good idea to have a technology partner that's able to integrate with various softwares that's, certified for all these different things that you need. And NMI has really become the market leader at becoming really that technology company that specializes in working with ISO sales organizations in the industry to really become that next generation ISO.
Yeah, and the next gen, like we found out in our interview today, the next gen ISO has to really be thinking ahead.
Yes.
And being able to partner with have an integration partner that is also thinking ahead is a winning formula.
Awesome. So head over to ccsalespro.com/NMI. Fill out that little form there, learn more about it. I've got a really exciting event, actually a webinar I'm going to be doing with NMI coming up soon. So stay tuned for more news on that. But really excited about that sponsorship and appreciate everybody taking time to head over there and check it out.
Yeah, thanks, James.
And now, here is Questions from the Field with James Shepard.
So Patti, one thing that every agent will understand as a challenge is getting past the gatekeeper. Whether that gatekeeper is over the phone, you're talking to an employee, you're trying to get to the owner, or you walk into a business, you're talking to someone, you're trying to get to the owner. And so I just want to give a couple of tips today that I found to be really successful. In fact, I'll be honest. I mean, there's a lot of times I share topics where I feel like I have the expertise to share the topic because of my connection to other experts that I've learned from, right? Then there are things where I feel like this is an area where I, on my own, have my own level of expertise. And this is definitely one of those things.
Yes.
I would say
I've heard you give lessons on this, and you're really good at it.
Well, and one of my favorite things to do, I used to do a lot more of the live sales training events at companies. Now I find myself more in the boardroom than in the training events, but I still do some of that. But one of my favorite things to do was to call people on speakerphone.
Right.
And one of the things that the agents would always be surprised at after that session, when I would say, okay, what did I do that you had questions about? They would always be like, how in the world you get past every single gatekeeper, And so I really believe I have some advice that will help you. So let's talk about the phone, because the phone versus in person is very, very different. Sure. So when you're on the phone, there's really only two keys that you need to understand to get past the gatekeeper. Number one is don't ask for the decision maker.
Right.
You ask for the decision maker, you are not going to get them. It's very difficult. So remove the line, is the owner or manager available? Just remove that line from your vocabulary, from your script. Don't ever use that. Instead, you want to ask a question that only the decision maker would know the answer to. Right. So you'd say, the reason I'm calling today is that my company has come up with some proprietary technology, and we're actually able to eliminate payment processing costs. If we're selling cash discounting, we eliminate payment processing costs. And so I'd like to talk to you a little bit about if you're still paying payment processing fees and how you have that structured. So if I say something like that and I'm talking to someone who's not the decision maker, they are not going to be able to communicate with me about that. So they are immediately going to say, I'm the wrong person to speak to about that. They're going to indicate that I'm not talking to the decision maker. So I don't need to ask for the decision maker. I need to ask a question that only the decision maker could engage with me on. And then key number two is just speed. Okay. The way to get past the gatekeeper is to be more prepared at getting around them than they are at blocking you. And so you have to be quick, very, very quick. So it's very simple actually, but the idea is when they say to you, well, they're not
I'm not the right person.
I'm not the right person. You want to talk to somebody else. So the first thing you got to do is find out the name of the person you want to speak to.
Right.
And again, we want to use speed. So we're going to very quickly say, oh, who does handle that? Who should I speak to? Just quick. Don't drag it out. Don't say like, oh, I totally understand and I really appreciate it. Is there someone I could speak to that would be the right person to talk with about this? No, you just gave them way too much time to think of their excuse, which is going to be, well, actually that person's not available. Right.
Sure.
And actually they're standing 5 feet away.
Right.
So instead you go quick and you say, oh, sure. Who handles that? Who would I talk to about that? Just quick. So then they give you the name. Well, that would be Susan. That would be Bill. Usually when they give you that, they're then going to follow it up with the excuse. They're going to say, well, that would be Susan, but she's not available. She's in the back. She's not here today.
Right.
So what you have to do is, as politely as you can, you have to cut them off.
And fast.
So, yeah, and quick, very quick. So they say, yeah, you probably want to talk to Susan about that. Oh, is she in? Right, just quick. Don't let them say the next part. Yeah, Bill, I think would be the person for that. Oh, great. Is he there?
Right.
Just quick. And so they won't a lot of times be able to, get around that. Then when they confirm it, and again, they're about to give they're trying to give you the excuse, right? But you're too fast for them. So they're going to say, well, yeah, she's here. She's in the back. And then they're about to say, but she's working on something, or I'll take a message or whatever. But again, we don't let them do that because we're faster than they are. Right. And so what we do is we thank them. Okay. Why are we thanking them? We're thanking them for getting them on the phone for us, which they haven't done yet. But people, it turns out, when you get thanked for something, it's very hard for you to not do the thing that you already got thanked for.
Right.
People like being thanked. It's a psychological thing.
Sure.
So they say, yeah, Susan, she's in the back. Oh, awesome. Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'll hold. And so you didn't ask them to go get the person. You just said, thank you so much. I'll hold. Now, sometimes what will happen is the gatekeeper will be so surprised by all of this that they won't even know what to do.
Right.
And they'll pause for a second and then they'll say like, well, no, I mean, she's busy. And then they'll try to get this excuse in the back. And no matter what they say there, you just go back to the I'll hold and you just thank them again. And you just say, oh, I understand. I'm in no rush. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'll hold.
I'll hold. Yep.
And when you do that, most salespeople I've worked with, they have a hard time with that. They just can't, they don't have the self-confidence or something to pull that off. Right. But if you can pull that off, extremely effective. So over the phone, it's about getting, not asking for the person, get the name of the person that you need to talk to, and then use speed to get past the decision maker. When you're in there face-to-face, very, very similar. But I think the one big difference when you're face-to-face is that your confidence level is really going to dictate your contact rate.
Sure.
And people don't seem to understand that when I talk to agents and they're like, I can't seem to ever get in touch with a business owner. No one's ever there that I need to talk with. And when they say that, I always intuitively know that the problem is their confidence level. And so, imagine if the governor of the state that you live in was walking into businesses to talk with business owners.
Right.
How many business owners do you think he would be able to talk to?
All of them, of course.
All of them. He walked into 10. Why? Because they would get the business owner on the phone if they weren't there. They would talk to every business owner. Now, we might not be able to get quite to that level, but we can get pretty close. And the idea is when you walk in, you want to be the kind of person that the business owner is going to want to talk to. And so you want to be the kind of person that seems important enough that the employees say, I don't want to get in trouble for not introducing, the business owner to this person. So when you walk into a business, walk in, use humor, whatever you need to just come out of your shell and to be over the top confident. Hey, how's everybody doing today? Great. Hey, my name is James Shepard. And I don't think I've ever been in here before. How long have you guys been at this location? 8 years. Oh my goodness. That is fantastic. Well, congratulations on your success. The reason I stopped by today, and then you go into it. And so you want to have, you want to be confident. You want to come out of your shell. And then when they talk to you and say, oh, I'm not the right person to speak with about that. Oh, that's no problem at all. Who should I talk to? Who's the person? You got to be over the top confident in order to pull all this off. And so a lot of the same things work. I like to use the same thing, the speed. Speed's not as important here because they can't hang up on you, but you do want to jump in there. Don't let them say something you don't want them to say.
And don't let them turn their backs on you.
Exactly. Yep.
Right.
And so you do want to kind of be in that moment, but most importantly, face to face. But getting beyond that gatekeeper, it's definitely about the confidence.
You know, I would add to this, James, that a really good thing to do would be to practice with role playing, and not with your husband or wife or your kids. Find somebody else, like a neighbor or a friend, you know,
Sure.
that you can be, you know, that you can really, you know, if you're dealing with your husband or wife, they're always going to go, oh yeah, okay, you're good, you did
Right.
that good, honey.
Somebody
Whereas,
will push back on you.
right, somebody that's going to give you a little pushback. I would really recommend that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Role playing is always crucial. And I'll tell you one thing you can do is even if you don't have somebody and you want to role play, you can always role play with yourself by using voice notes.
Right.
On your phone and just record yourself. And you can't really role play per se, but you can record your lines and play them back and try to tweak them.
Try to refine them and everything. Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there you go, everybody.
Stuff,
That's how to get past gatekeeper.
Thanks.
This is the Insider's Report with Patti Murphy.
You know, we haven't spoken a lot about gift cards lately, James. I know you recently published a merchant sales insight that was obviously jam-packed with insights on
Sure.
on selling gift cards. But today I sort of want to give some data points that sort of really drive home why ISOs and agents should be thinking about selling gift cards.
Yeah.
And it comes from basically, I think it's like 3 different sources. So I'm going to start off with Fiserv.
Okay.
I did a lot of this research for the Green Sheet on an article I think that's coming out. It should post next week. So, you know, if you want to get more detail, that's in there.
Sure.
And I think I even quote you. But from Fiserv, I discovered from research they've done, 58% of consumers plan to give gift cards during the year-end holiday season. And that's up from about 42% in 2020.
Oh, wow. That's a big increase.
That's a big increase. Here's the thing that really struck me. 74% of consumers purchase gift cards from small businesses, not from the big chains.
Wow. That's really interesting.
That's really interesting. 90% of people who receive a gift card from a small business that they've never shopped at would indeed go shop at this business to redeem the gift card value, but also make future shopping trips there. Sort of like opens it up to you know, a new opportunity. Consumers receiving gift cards spend on average $59 more than the value that's on the cards.
Wow.
And supermarkets have the biggest lift. Consumers spend about 94% more than the value on the cards. Of course, having gone grocery shopping recently, I can understand that. I mean,
yeah, of course.
Digital e-cards are a huge innovation, especially since the COVID pandemic, as Laura Hanley, an analyst at Mercator Advisory Group, noted to me recently. But these are not cannibalizing plastic card usage. In fact, a Fiserv exec told me it's very additive, the digital cards are. And 53% of consumers have paid for purchases using gift cards in their digital wallets.
Wow.
Which makes, according to Fiserv's research, makes gift cards the 3rd most popular payment instrument in digital wallets.
Now, what does that even mean? I've never done that before.
I haven't either. And what he said was, you know, basically you add the card.
I need to do more research on that. I've never done that. I didn't even know that was possible.
I had never done it either. Not that I use digital wallets a lot, but I do occasionally use my digital wallet.
Apparently, we're now in the minority that we haven't done this.
We haven't done this because I do gift cards all the time. I'm one of those people that buys them for myself.
Yeah.
You know, to get points from my grocery store, you know?
Right. So that's interesting.
Yeah. I had not realized that. And and here's a couple data points from Blackhawk, you know, which is the big gift card company. 91% of consumers have purchased gift cards. 69% of them, or 69% of consumers, have purchased cards for themselves. So I'm not in the minority now in that one. I'm on the majority on that one. 87%, of course, you know, a higher percentage, 87, purchased them as gifts.
Right.
But there's, and then finally, a consumer poll by the online site bankrate.com really drives home the cash flow advantages to merchants of selling gift cards.
Sure.
51% of consumers forget to use money gifted to them on gift cards, whether they be electronic or plastic. And combined, these Americans are leaving $15.3 billion on the table, or an average of $116 per person.
Good.
That was this year. And last year, it was $167 per person.
Wow, that's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, that's basically free money to the merchants. I mean, depending on the state laws. I mean, state laws.
Of course,
there are some state laws that right.
I mean, either way, it's called float.
Yeah.
Right. And so, regardless of state regulations, it is cash flow.
Right.
What you do with that cash flow and how you redeem future purchases and all of that is regulated to some extent. But either way, I mean,
and how you claim it as income, or whether you have to hand it to over to the state for what do they call that? Escrow. It's not an escrow, is it? You know, when you I don't
remember the name now, but
I can't.
Escrow is the right idea. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's the right idea, but the right name escapes me at this point. But it's basically a pool of funds that the state holds until people claim them.
Right.
I have some friends who've actually done that, and it's like, 10 years after their parents died, they realize there's all this money that's sitting in this fund,
Yep.
And it's like, oh, I can get that money.
Right. Right. Wow. So interesting. Yeah. It'll be very interesting to see how it develops. I know that COVID really gave gift cards a huge bump.
So. And I mean, I just think it's one of those things I was noticing when we were just talking to Kyle. He had his sign out, behind him for his company, and it's like, payments, payroll, gift cards, know, and I think that people should really be pushing that, because it's a good deal for consumers, for merchants, and for the ISOs and agents.
Love it. Great stuff as always, Patti.
Thanks, James.
Thank you for listening to the Merchant Sales Podcast. Whether you are an industry veteran, processing executive, or just trying to learn about the payment space, we appreciate your time. The Merchant Sales Podcast is a joint production of greensheet.com and ccsalespro.com, and we hope you will tune in next week for more information and tips on building your merchant services business.